the best testimony you can give is just to live an on-fire life. People should just see you and think something's different.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls around the world? I would like to welcome you back to the Real Talk with Zuby podcast. On today's episode, we've got on a brilliant guest. He is a good friend of mine. He is a men's coach. He is a family man, a dutiful husband and father of three. And this is Tyler Todt. Welcome to the show.
Man, it's an honor to be on, Zuby. Had a great workout with you this morning. It's always great when we get to hang out, man. So just honored as always to be here, brother.
No doubt, bro. Great to see you, man. Always a pleasure. For people who are listening who don't know who you are, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, man. Tyler Todt. About 5 or 6 years ago, to be honest, I would just describe myself as a very normal guy. I worked and managed a bank back then and came across this crazy guy on X now, back then Twitter. His name was Zuby, and he broke the women's world record for deadlift.
Let's go.
I started following you and a bunch of other guys and just realizing that, man, I'm waking up every day and I'm consuming a lot of media. I'm reading Fox News. I'm reading CNN. And I'm just kind of living this mainstream life. I found myself overweight at this time, pretty unhappy, on anxiety meds. And just to be honest, a lot of guys like you, I started looking at and modeling and saying, well, if these guys can do that, why can't I? So I started to unlearn a lot of the things in life. And man, now 5 years later, I fired my company a couple years after that, multiple streams of income, get to stay home more with my children, just created a life that I'm really proud of and built a lot of stuff out now, help and coach men all over the world to kind of do the same, get in shape, take their life back, and really more fulfilling life for me, man. So have to thank you and tip my cap to you, brother.
No doubt, bro. Dude, you inspire me every day as well. So I'm glad that there's the mutual respect, admiration, and inspiration that's going on there. One thing I say to you all the time is I think you are like one of the most positive people on social media. When people think of social media, particularly Twitter or X, they think negativity, they think toxicity, they think politics, they think people fighting all the time. And your feed is just a stream of, just your kids are featured on there a lot. You're just telling stories about family life, just the day-to-day stuff, fitness motivation, all of the positivity. I've always known you to be that guy, but from knowing a little bit more about your story, you haven't always been that super positive, optimistic guy. So tell me about that journey.
Yeah, man. So I always joke that if you ask my ex-wife, she would say I'm not the most positive guy. And if you asked a lot of people in my past, I was a professional poker player for a decade. Always that guy that was like complaining, oh man, I run bad or this or that. And always just had that sort of lens in life. And really, man, just one day kind of woke up and I made a choice. I was, again, managing a bank and I came home from work one day and I'll never forget this day, man. It was a Sunday. I was watching football all day. I'd ordered pizza, had a bag of chips and some soda on the ground. And my wife kind of came in and I grumbled at her and I was complaining, I've worked 6 days this week and I just want some time to watch football. And, my wife came into the room that night and she said something to me after my daughter went to bed. She'd invited me to come out and hang out with her and my daughter a couple times. And I grumbled at her and said no. And she said, Ty, if you're unhappy with where you're at in life right now, just know that I love you and you're not stuck. And I'll work with you to create any life you want. And I broke down in tears that night, to be honest. I started crying and I realized, the man that God created me to be, I was living a lukewarm version of that guy at that point. Bro, I went to church every week. I smiled and took the happy family picture, but I didn't give God more than 1 hour a week. I never opened my Bible for a decade before that. I said that was the most important thing in my life, but I gave Netflix 25 hours a week. I gave God one, I just didn't prioritize the right things in my life. I would tell everybody that my family was the most important thing, but I'd go to bars with friends pretty routinely and choose them over my family. And so that was the night in my life where I literally cried for 2 hours and I got out a notebook and I'll never forget it was, 10, 11 o'clock at night at this point. And my wife was in bed and I went and I prayed over my daughter and I went and prayed over my wife that was sleeping. And then I just prayed and got on my knees and I said, God, I don't know really what I'm doing right now, but I want to go all in. For the first time, I just want to sell out to you and you show me where to go. You guide my steps. For the first time, I don't want to drive. I don't want to be in the driver's seat. I want to go in the passenger seat and let you take the wheel. And I didn't really know what that meant at that point, but I wrote down a few rules for myself then. I'm going to not complain anymore. That was the first one. My wife, I used to accuse her of being negative, man. I'd be like, why are you so negative? And she'd be like, read back your last 5 texts to me. And I'm complaining about my boss. I'm complaining, And so it's just, I decided from that point on, if I were to come home from work and my wife said, how was your day? and it was the worst day in the world, I'd say, you know what, I'm grateful I got a paycheck. I decided I wake up every day. I'm on a streak now of like 2,156 days, I think is today. I write down right when I wake up 3 things I'm grateful for every day. I spend a minute just praying over that, thanking the Lord for the gifts that he's given me, and just asking him to shift my focus onto those blessings because they're everywhere, man. And as you know, the world, man, it's crazy out there too. You can choose to focus either way. But I just made certain rules for myself like this. I'm going to get up early and work out. I'm going to fuel my body better than I was back then. I'm going to quit drinking with the friends. I just decided that night, people say they're going to change their life all the time. I'm going to actually do it. And it's been an up and down journey. Again, I'm grateful for the mentors and people that I look up to in my life, you being one of them that has helped guide that journey. And you know, it's kind of 2 steps forward, a step back, 3 forward, 1 back. It's not been easy. And we're still a work in progress, right? We're still going. But that was the defining moment in my life where I just decided my life is on me and I'm letting Jesus take the wheel. And it's been good things ever since then, man.
I love that, man. How long ago was that, you said?
So that was about 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago, man.
What have you found hardest in that 5 years?
You know, just as a man, I think I always have this natural tendency, even when things are going well, to just want to put God in the back burner, to want to think I can do it on my own, to want to have that own vision of my life. You probably know this too, man, but better than anybody, you have millions of followers around. And I always say one of the things I admire most about you is you're super humble, bro. You know, like you ask me how my kids are doing and you got 10 million people that are following you all the time, you know? And that's a hard thing when you're on social media and you have, you know, I've got a few 100,000 people following you and every day they're telling you how great you are and you're waking up to DMs and this and that. And sometimes you can believe your own hype. And I think that's a pretty dangerous thing. And so about a year or so ago, man, I wrote this down. I journal every day and I wrote down, I'm going to give my first fruits to the Lord.
Yes.
And so every day I wake up, man, in that quiet time in the morning, before I turn on X, before I go to anything else, the Lord's going to get my attention. And I'm going to just surrender the day to him and ask him to remove the ego, to just more of Jesus and less of Tyler, essentially. And that's been a pretty good thing. But that's an ongoing struggle too, man. Because again, men, we want to build, we want to conquer, we want to create, right?
Yeah, of course. It's our default.
Yes.
And I think one of the challenges of life in general, I don't think just being a man, but being a human being, being a fallen creature, is that we have to constantly fight against our nature, right? So we all have a nature, and human nature tends towards sin. It tends towards goodness in certain ways as well, but there's always that proclivity. There's always temptation. There's, you know, and we live in a very secular age and a secular society where the things that are valued and the things that are talked about, right? You coming in on this podcast and talking about, you know, giving it up to Jesus and praying and so on, right? There's people who are listening who are like, oh my gosh, you know, this Jesus talk. And what's crazy is there'll be people who are Christians who will all even be like, ooh, like that's a bit on the nose, right? That's a little, are we supposed to talk in that language kind of thing?
Yeah.
And that says a lot about where we are in society, where it's considered somehow taboo in a country where the majority of people still identify as Christian to talk in that sort of language. Everything is supposed to be neutralized and secularized. And yeah, we're just supposed to be caught up in the world and happiness and the universe and autonomy and, right? Like you can, all the vibes, right? Like all of that is energy. All of that is fine. But just saying like God, Jesus, those type of words, it's like, ooh, can you
tone it down.
Tone that down a little bit.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, even today on X, I put a post out and had somebody say, I follow you, but quit talking about Jesus.
Yeah.
You know, and I get that a lot. And it's just, you know, that's the cornerstone of my life. I can't. And it's, you know, a couple things on that, man. Society. Last night we had a debate, right? And everybody's talking today about how did we wind up here with these two people and these candidates and culture the way it is in society. And to me, it's very simple. We've left a lot of the traditional values and we've replaced God. You know, we took him out of school with prayer. We took God out of a lot of our lives. And this is the result. This is where you're going to end up, right? The older I get, man, you know, hitting 40 this last year, I just kind of see he gave us a blueprint and he gave us, if you stay within these confines, you know, your life just tends to run better. And I think that a lot of people look at those confines as a prison.
Yes.
And they might say, you know, marriage, you see like by my shirt, man, I love being a dad, right? Like, I'm like that dad, you know?
Yeah, for people who are just on the audio podcast only, just describing Tyler's shirt here, it says it's got best daddy ever printed on it multiple times. And it's got stick figures with photos of his son's faces with like massive heads smiling and laughing scattered all around the t-shirt. So yeah, it's a funny shirt.
But it's like, you know, I embrace that role, right? And there's people that will say, you know, if you're a high value man or this or that, or like I have people tell me, well, you should get the right to go off on your wife and to do these other things. I have people tell me this and I say, you know, I believe God put this in place for me to protect me.
Yes.
To protect my family, the legacy, the chaos that would create. I don't feel like that inhibits me at all. I actually think it's a beautiful thing. And I think when you're in a committed marriage, sex becomes more than just a physical, can I get a temporary pleasure? It's more of a spiritual thing to me now, you know? And I think I just view everything now sort of through that lens. And the older I get, and I think that's been a gift of having multiple children, as you start to look at them, I think the way that the Lord looks at you, you know, they're my children. I'm just his child trying to walk out and I do dumb things a lot and he has to forgive me, the same that I have with my kids. But we're just trying to have that sort of relationship, right?
I saw a really funny, I don't know, was it a meme? I think I saw a meme. It was either this morning or yesterday. And it was like, parents, why won't my children listen to me? God, LOL.
I saw that one and it's, oh man. Yeah, that one hits hard. That one hits home. And especially with two toddlers, right? Yeah. Like I always tell the story with Tyson, and you've met Tyson, you know, he's a wild kid, right? He's 18 months old and we're walking and I look down and I see a big thorn bush and I say, hey buddy, don't touch that one. And so Kingston's really cautious. My other son, he immediately grabs my leg, like, keep me safe, daddy. That's, you know, Tyson just looks right up at me, looks back at the thorn bush and just smacks it. No. And he goes, boo, 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 boo. And he's like, he just had to know, you know? And I think that is the sinful nature in a lot of us humans. We want to know. And it's like, I don't know, man, I'm reading this book now and it says this hit home where it's like sin and the enemy is really good at convincing us to just look, just taste, just kind of wander over there a little bit. It'll be okay. And then when you do it and you realize, man, that's not as fulfilling as I thought it would be, then he like the next lie is like, we'll do it bigger, do more, go more for that, right? And it's this cycle, but once you can kind of unlearn that and have kind of like a peace, I think I went 36 years of my life without having peace. And in that time, man, you know, I was a professional poker player. At 23, I was worth over $500,000 I had won playing poker. I had a brand new Benz. I had a lot of girls. I had nightclubs. I had all the things that society would say would make you happy. I wasn't going to church at that time. And dude, I was the most unhappy, ungrateful, always the next thing, just no peace, right? And I do believe we all just have this big hole inside of us that like only one thing fills. And maybe that offends some people. You know, I'll meet people where they're at. Some of my best friends in life are atheists or Jewish or Muslim or whatever that is, man. I'm okay with where you're at. Faith to me is super personal, but it's really hard for me to talk about my journey and how I've gotten to where I am and the success I have without talking about that baseline of that's who I am.
As you should. You know, I've had conversations with people, particularly in music and entertainment, they're believers, they're Christians, but they're super quiet about it because they feel either some type of shame or they're worried about judgments or they think it's going to weird people out or whatever the case may be. And they'll tell me, oh, I love the fact that you're upfront and open about your faith and your Christianity. And I'm like, yeah, like, why wouldn't I be? It's something that I'm proud of and it's something I'm important. And I can't even answer certain questions. I do so many interviews and I can't even answer certain questions honestly without talking about my faith.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I get a lot of questions about, oh, you're so courageous and speaking out and just, you know, you're outspoken and the way you say this or address this or this, like, how do you do that? And I'm like, I fear God, not man. I fear God. Or, you know, how did you know what your path would be? How do you stay positive? It's like God, Jesus. I can give you practical things, which I could secularize and explain certain things that are just kind of like habits that you can do. Yeah. But at the core of it, if I'm being real with you, that's where that's the root, that's the foundation. Does this mean I'm like perfect in following in the footsteps of Christ? No, absolutely not throughout my life. But it's so core and essential to it that I would essentially be lying by omission if I didn't even bring that up. If I pretended that I was just this totally secular guy and I just did it all DIY, right? Like I can sell that story, right? I did it all because I did do it excluding God. I did kind of do it all on my own and with support of my fans and supporters. I didn't have some big team or army or multi-million-dollar PR campaign or something like that.
It still blows my mind you don't have a team, man, whenever I see it. It's just you.
I got my supporters. That's my team right there, man. So yeah, I like the fact that I do think that this conversation is starting to come back in the mainstream in some ways. And I'm sure I have some bias here just in terms of who and what I follow. But I find that even in the non-Christian world, more and more people are at least willing to have these conversations and discussions, and there's a curiosity in it. Jordan Peterson's next book and his current tour is called We Who Wrestle with God. I know a lot of people out there who are more atheistic or secular, and they're having more conversations with people who are religious. And maybe they themselves are not believers, but they're curious about it. If you listen to Joe Rogan podcast from 10 years ago, he would just kind of like, he thought religion was just kind of stupid and would kind of make fun of it. Now he's like, okay, this is interesting. Let me have some people on the podcast to have these conversations. And I mean, I've heard him reference the Bible. He was like, he was like, I was reading the Bible the other day. And, I'm just like, oh, wow, this is like, I don't know exactly what's happening, but there's something interesting. So have you seen that as well? Yeah,
I definitely think so, man. And it's a mutual guy we know, Alex Feinberg, Alex, right? Yeah. And I had him on a podcast a while, and I just asked him a question. I said, you're one of the smartest people I know IQ wise, right? And he was a non-believer. And I said, but you talk about and you reference that you want to live a life more like a lot of the Christian people that you know. And I said, why? Can I just ask you that? And he said, well, just from a logical standpoint, I see a lot of just craziness on this other side, and I don't want anything to do with it. And he said, the most people that I know that are in happy marriages, that are just content and have peace and joy, they just tend to follow this book. And so it does make me a little curious. And I think that there are just a lot of people, man. It's, you mentioned this once during COVID, and I think it really relates here. The tighter they squeeze and the crazier it gets, the more people slip out the side, right? And with COVID, I think we saw that. When it was like, hey guys, it's 2 weeks. People are like, okay, man, like maybe this is a scam, but it's like 2 weeks, right? Like we can do it. Hey, you can't go outside unless you have a face diaper on, right? Okay, so you lose a little more. Like I ain't doing that, some of us. And then some people are like, okay, it's just a, but the crazier it got, the more people that got off the side. And now, dude, what were we looking at right before we came on here? A job application. And it's like, there's 90 genders. Like you're trying to tell me there's 90 genders. And like, I think enough people now are just kind of waking up and they're like, maybe there's something to this old school way. Maybe when we look back 50 years ago, there's been problems in society, but maybe it wasn't as crazy as it's gotten. And maybe we need to kind of pump the brakes and listen to this other side a little bit. And look, man, I'll meet people where they are. And again, I think faith is so personal. I don't think my personal relationship with Jesus should look like yours, and mine doesn't look like my parents and this or that. But I think if you have a rock that you can put your life on, that just makes life and everything so much better. And I think a lot of these people that are searching, and they're you look at a guy like Jim Carrey, who has made $300 million, been the biggest star in the world. And what was his quote? I wish everybody could get rich, famous, and accomplish all their dreams so they could see it's meaningless. Yeah. And it's like, this world just offers a lot of shiny things, but I think when you get to that mountain and then you realize, man, there's got to be something else, and it's, an Andrew Tate tweet hit me where he's like, when I was broke and had nothing, it was just me and the homies playing Uno. He's like, now we grinded all this and we thought it was going to be this and this. And he goes, really, at the end of the day, it's just me and the homies playing Uno. And I thought like, yeah, man, it's like, this is a billionaire with every toy in the world. And it really just comes back to very simple and basic things. And I think a lot of people, the more they search for other things, the more that it kind of comes back to like, why are we here? What are these bigger questions? What's the purpose of life? What's the rock that I stand upon? And if I either fear God or you fear everything else, right? That's kind of what I like to say. And there's a lot of things to fear right now, man. And so if you don't want to wake up with that kind of fear, it's nice to have that peace to know, I know where I'm going. I know what it's going to look like. I'm okay with that,
Dude, it's so many interesting points there. I think it's one of those things where number one, people always like to learn things the hard way, right? So it's one thing, like you said, with your son. You know, you have one son and you say, hey, that thing is sharp. Don't touch it. It's going to hurt you. And he's like, okay, daddy. And then there's another personality type, which is like, I'm not going to believe it's sharp and it's going to hurt me until I do it. Right. So I think there's that factor. And then I think beyond it, with something you were saying just a bit later on is, I think I think with each personality type, you kind of get a different, with every personality type and background and situation somebody may be in, you get unique blessings and advantages, and you also get some unique challenges that can oftentimes sound to an outsider like it's all upside, but it's not. Okay, so if you're broke, or if you grew up poor, or whatever the case may be, I can totally, this is not me, but I can totally understand why someone would think that money is really just the solution.
Yeah.
And they look at rich people and they're just like, they have, what on earth, why should this person complain about anything? If I had that much money, I would not be complaining, and so on. And then once someone experiences a level of money, or it could be fame, it could be notoriety, you know, the things that the material world tells us to care about, those measures of success, especially when they have an excess of it and they've lived like that for a while, you quickly see that without the other solid components, they still feel hollow, they still feel empty. And that can be hard to understand, right? How can someone be a billionaire and they're not happy and content? And it's like, well, if they don't have those things that make you happy and content beyond material comfort, then there's still that hole there. Yeah. And I think there are some people who are wise enough to know, okay, I don't need to go through all that to realize that's the case. But other people, again, they kind of need to do it that hard way and achieve all of this stuff and chase all of this stuff and live through it all and be like, yeah, you know what? I still don't feel satisfied. And people play the comparison game, because the truth is there's always going to be people who have more than you. Yeah. You could be worth $100 billion, man. There's still someone there who's worth $200 billion.
Oh, you're poor in some circles, man. I've coached a guy who is worth 1.2, and he told me in my circle, I'm the poorest guy. Yeah. I have the smallest yacht. He felt poor because his friends were worth 5 and 10 billion. And so it's, yeah, man, if you're not content in that, what's it matter? And I think we've all played that. Like, bro, if somebody would have told you 15 years ago, hey man, you could have 5 million followers. You could have this. You could have interviewed the 5 most famous people on earth. You would have been like, done. I'll never need anything else. Yeah. Like snap at it, right? I think most people would say that, but I think you make a great point where if you don't have money, or if you don't have some of these things, that's where you need to meet people where they are and be empathetic and not judge and say, hey, I understand that, right? And it's like, I say, like, my wife runs a nonprofit, right? And she doesn't go in and preach Christianity, because the country she's going into, they lack food and water. Yes. So she meets them where they are and provides food and water. And then if there's a time to have a conversation about it, she has a conversation about it. But I think too many Christians go in like just guns blazing. And it's like, you know, we're here in Vegas, man. There's literally a guy that stands out on the strip with a bullhorn and he shouts, "You're going to hell." Okay, yeah. And it's like, bro, that's probably not the right, you know, I don't know how many people have stopped and said, tell me more about that, right? Like, I'm curious. And so I think as Christians, you have to be kind of strategic as well and meet people where they are. And I think that's a good point, where somebody who doesn't have any money probably almost needs to go through some of that, right? And you can't condemn them for going through that. You just have to kind of love on people, man. It's what we're called to do. And when they're ready to chat, you make yourself available. No doubt. And I think something you do, which is brilliant, and you know, I try to do the same. And just let me not say I try, because it's not really an effort. I think if I'm doing it right, then it just happens. But this is just leading by example. I've often said that I think the best PR and marketing for any belief system, and this includes religion more so than anything else, is its followers. It's the best form of advertising, and it's also the best way to put people off. Yes.
When I talk to people who are particularly Western atheists who were raised in religious households, I often find it's Catholicism in particular, but it could be any type of church. A lot of them experience some type of what we could call like church hurt or mistreatment from people who call themselves Christians, but who did something bad to them or treated them poorly, and therefore they put that on the religion and they put that on Christianity. And I can fully understand why people might do that if they've had this very personal experience. And so it's a poor representation, right? Like nothing undermines Christianity more, in my opinion, than, I don't know, something like this whole Catholic Church scandal that happened, right?
Where you're going up preaching on Sunday and doing these terrible things for years, right?
Exactly, right? Yeah. That something like that, or I don't know, there's some massive, huge famous pastor out there or whatever preaching whatever, and then they're sleeping with all these women who aren't their wife, or like that type of thing, or they took all this money from the church and they went and bought a private jet and a Rolls Royce, like that type of thing. I'm like, guys, that is way more damage. That does more damage to the church than any atheist.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that level of hypocrisy and people just being able to point at it and go, well, what about that? What about that? What about that? And then you have to have the whole conversation of like, well, yeah. But then I think on the flip side, when someone just sees someone who is living a great life and they're genuinely happy, not on the surface level, but long-term, truly joyful and content with their life, and they're raising wonderful kids and they're a pillar in their community and they're inspiring other people and so on. And then they're like, oh, let me learn more about this person. And it's like, oh, okay. A lot of this is motivated by their belief. I think that's like the best form of proselytizing. I think that's more effective than standing with a bullhorn and shouting, damnation Bible verses at people, which is most likely just going to anger them. And if anything, probably switch them off, turn them off the religion and just make them think, oh, these crazy Christians with their bullhorns and yelling at people in the street. I admire this person's passion in a way.
Right.
But the motivation and the tactics, certainly the tactics, I don't think are effective. And the motivation, hopefully it's good, but it might not be.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know the individual's heart.
I just think, what would that have done to me when I was 24, 25, and I didn't really have a relationship, and now I'm drinking with my friends and walking along the strip, and some dude's yelling at me, "You're damned to hell for eternity." I'm like, I want nothing to do with you, man. I'm going the other way, right? And so, man, I remember when you tweeted that actually, and I sent that to my men's group.
I tweeted which one?
The one that said the best representation or the best marketing tool for fill in the blank, right? For religion, we'll say, was the main topic you said. And then I remember referencing a Bible verse that, we're called to be the light, the salt of the earth, right? That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to go out and be a little different. And even at the beginning of the pod, we're like, oh, some people kind of get touched by like saying that, I kind of think we're supposed to be different, man. And I don't go around in my day-to-day life, like at the supermarket being like, hey, Jesus, he's my friend, but I do think that people should see us and say, man, like, what's different about you? Like, hey, Ty, like, do you not see what's going on? Wars here and wars there, and the political climate and inflation, and there's all these reasons to like be upset. And why are you happy? Like, why do you wake up every day just pretty joyful? That's not normal. And then that gives you a door to say, well, let me tell you about the bedrock of my life, right? And I don't like to, I don't know, I had a preacher once say, the best testimony you can give is just to live an on-fire life. People should just see you and think something's different, And so I just try and think of that every day, man. And that's why X is cool, and sharing your life on social media is really cool. And I make it a point. I bet I've met 1,000 people off Twitter now, and it's really easy living in Vegas. Yeah, awesome. Because people are here for conventions, whatever, and I just invite them. I'm like, dude, I've had so many people meet me and my kids at the park, and I'm like, we're going to be here for 2 hours. If you want to come swimming with us, you want to meet me at the gym, whatever that is, right? I just like to show people like, yeah, man, anybody can probably hop on social media and post platitudes and pretend to be something for a little bit. But I think I'm 4.5 years in now, and I've met 1,000 people, and it's like, this is just kind of who I am, right? And I strive to just be a little more positive each day and to put that out there. And I don't know, man, that's the gift of social media. Now we can broadcast that and hopefully inspire people. And then again, just meet other people where they're at. Like I tell people all the time, it'd be weird if we agreed on everything. So you don't need to be an on fire Jesus guy to follow me. Like, hey man, let's just meet each other where we're at. And that's cool. You know, I'll encourage you on your journey too.
Something I find shocking is that I've realized just how little encouragement a lot of people get, particularly boys and young men. Because I grew up in an environment where I've got super loving parents and siblings, and I grew up in a community where, man, I grew up in a bubble. I'll tell you how much of a bubble I grew up in. I don't know if I've told you this before. I didn't realize until I was, let's say maybe I was 9 or 10, somewhere between 8 and 10, is when I learned that it was possible for people to have children without being married. Because I'd never seen it before.
Wow.
Every single family where I grew up was intact. I had never seen a situation of a single parent, except like widows. But I didn't even know until I like learned the biology, right? The birds and the bees. I didn't even know that I just thought marriage preceded children, and it had to. I never thought about the function or so on. Do you know how I learned?
Maury Popovich? That talk show?
The talk show,
right? The fraternity test?
When they bring people on and they'd be like, this woman is here and she's brought these 3 men to find out who's the father.
I remember that
and
show.
I was like, surely it's the husband. Like, right? Like, and then I was like, wait, like.
That show is so wild. They'd be like, you're not the father. And then they'd go high-five the audience. You're like, I told you.
Dude, so that just shows like I grew up in that type of environment, and there was so much like positive reinforcement and encouragement. And that was just the norm and the default. And then as I got older and you start traveling and meeting people from all sorts of backgrounds and walks of life, and I've just been struck by how little encouragement some people get. Like there's guys who just go through the thing. There's no one who's just like encouraging them and saying, hey, I'm proud of you, man. Hey, you can do this. You're capable of this. And now we live in this unique era where I think there's a great opportunity for that, where we can be connecting across borders, across countries, across whatever it is, and you can actually put out a positive signal.
Yeah.
You can put out what could be positive, it could be negative, but you can put out a signal there, and over the course of time, people will find you, and you can really impact them and influence them in a better direction instead of just being locked into the negative media all the time, and they're just getting programmed by that nonstop, and then they obviously start getting. No wonder they're feeling anxious or depressed or they're upset or they're just angry all the time or they're feeling resentful, and you can kind of, without even necessarily even trying to like lift them up, you can naturally end up doing that. And I think that that's a very beautiful and admirable and new thing.
Yeah, I do too. And I think, I believe truly that the Lord created me to go into this space and a kind of a dark space and be a light in there and be an encouragement. Now, quick little story, and I want to segue first and say, man, you grew up in the ultimate privilege, and so did I.
Yep.
My folks, I know yours, have they been married 50 years now? Is that right?
I think 48.
48, okay. Yeah, mine are 46.
Amazing.
And so it's, to have that kind of example and to see that in your community, I mean, every stat across the board, and that's why I'm so passionate about fatherhood and dads being present and locked in. If you really want to change society, that's what you do. Every stat across the board, man. If you want to talk about wealth, if you want to talk about whatever thing you want to, incarceration rates, whatever it is, dads and moms raising kids. The nuclear family is a superpower. That's the way it's supposed to be. And so, for you to grow up in that kind of environment probably is a good indication of, that grounding that you had, right? And
shout out to mom and dad.
Yeah, shout out to mama and Zuby.
Still need to have them on the podcast.
Yeah, you do, man. That would be pretty incredible.
I know everyone says that parenting is an important job or even the most important one, but I still think that that's an understatement because your children, I think people forget that kids grow up and become adults, and those adults impact and influence everybody around them too. It's like this gigantic ripple effect, positive or negative or mixed, that goes out there and touches everybody that they ever interact with.
Yeah, that's why me and my wife, we sat down 3 years ago and we said, how do we want to change the world, right? Like we've got this amazing daughter and a good family and we're on a good trajectory. And we said, how do we want to change the world now? And we came up with, we wanted to do foster care, man, because of that. Because, once you learn that, dude, it's 89% of kids that'll age out of foster care. So when they hit 18 and they don't have anybody to call mom or dad, they'll end up incarcerated or homeless. Wait, 89%.
89%.
Yes.
Wow.
We read that stat and I couldn't believe it. And I said, okay, well, if they, you mentioned people just need encouragement, right? There's a lot of people that never have anybody tell them, hey, good job. Hey, I'm proud of you. And so me and my wife said, let's just be those people, right? And so we have fostered 7 kids over the last few years, returning 5 back to like awesome homes and being able to help those families. And that was like an amazing thing too. But it really opens your eyes, man. And that's why it's easier to be really positive on Twitter now. When I have a troll or somebody that might come in and just lashing out at you, like part of my heart just breaks. And I'm like, dude, this person probably grew up with, me and you were blessed. I had a mom and a dad. Dude, you get a B. Hey, great job, but you'll get them next time. Like you're in a sports game and they tell you, you did amazing. They're picking you up. They're encouraging you. A lot of these people that are now adults, some of them never had one person in their life to tell them. And I didn't know that was even a thing until we started foster care, right? I just thought at the worst, people have maybe one parent, that loves them and is going to have their back. And since we've kind of dug into this, man, I've just found that out that, dude, there are many kids that then grow into adults that never had anybody, that even if they had a mom or a dad around, it was an abusive environment, not a good place. And so it was an abusive environment, not a good place. And so it's like, man, I don't know, to be able to see that makes you a lot more empathetic, right? And like quick story here from Twitter, man, on again, why I'm so positive is I'll never forget this. I had a guy that was routinely commenting on my posts. I just post a lot of positive things and he would always just say, thank you, man, that made my day. Like, thank you, I needed that. And so one day I just felt this little tug, man, and I sent him a video, and I'm not going to say his name here because I don't want to embarrass him or whatever, but I just said, hey, brother, and said his name. It was just a minute-long video, and I said, man, you're so encouraging. I appreciate the feedback you give, and you're an amazing guy. Have the best day. And dude, the next day, I got a message back from him in tears. And he said, hey, man, I'm 41 years old at this point, and I can't remember the last time somebody told me, said my name, and gave me some encouragement. So that's the first time. And it's like, man, when I hear stories like that, it motivates me every day to get up and live my best life so that I'm filled up and I can pour back into some people like that didn't have, privilege is a crazy word right now, but like the privileges that I got, the privileges that you got, right? Growing up in a 2-family home that loved you and encouraged you and supported you, a lot of people don't have that. And so I love the fact that I get to broadcast that out a little bit and get to be a little positive and hopefully inspire some people in that way.
Yeah, man, dude, that's super positive, and I love those stories. As you said that, I just had a thought of something interesting that has happened with the internet and with social media, which is it's just exposed a lot of human beings and types of human beings, for better or for worse, that you typically don't encounter. So let me think through this. So for example, you'll hear a lot of talk right now in the modern West. You'll see articles, you'll see data, stats, and things about, say, for example, like the epidemic of male loneliness. And they might say something like, I don't know the percent, 30% of men are, feeling lonely or whatever it is. We all know the, depression stats and suicide stats and that kind of thing. And if I think anecdotally about my life and the guys that I know, almost by definition, I don't know any guys who are lonely because, like, at least I'm their friend, right? So, like, well, none of my friends are lonely. It's like, well, obviously because they're my friends. So you don't have like a view of these people. Like do you see what I mean? Like in your day-to-day life, by definition, you don't know and see them. So you're hearing, oh, there's all of these like millions of people out there who are experiencing this thing. And it doesn't really track with your reality because you're like, well, I don't like how, you're kind of like, how? That doesn't really make sense. I think the most common answer for how many very close friends do you have, I think for men, the most common answer is none. It doesn't mean that most men's answer is none, but the most common answer is 0. And I'm like, huh? Like, right? Like, it sounds kind of strange, but I think now with the advent of social media and just being able to interact with all these sorts of people, now it's very democratic in a way. It's like, oh, now everyone has a voice, for better or for worse, right? The angriest people, the happiest people, the most lonely people, the most social people, you're all kind of thrown into this mix together. And it's suddenly like, oh, wow, oh, there's these people, and you're impacting all these people and having all these different conversations. And there's something really cool about that. Sometimes it can be frustrating because you discover a whole other type of human and you're like, oh gosh, I've never come across someone like this in real life. Like, who are these guys? But yeah, I think that's quite an intriguing thing. I'm just thinking out loud on this. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that up until human history, we've never had this until 20 years ago, right? Like, we're the first real generation that's experienced this. And then our kids will kind of grow up thinking this is normal. But this is the first time we've had this kind of experiment in life where, dude, you will shoot this and broadcast it. And then how many countries right away people are watching and they have access to this forever. And so I don't know, it makes me, again, the empathetic part of me, I feel, and I hurt for people that are in that space. I also think it's never been easier to get out of that space.
Yes.
And if you are a guy that's listening to this and you're like, man, I'm one of those guys. I don't have friends. And I get it, man. I worked a corporate job for 6.5 years that I didn't really love, and it was a really negative environment. And, you know, if I had lived 40 years ago, I never would have had access to you, Zach Hommel, Ryan Stevens. A lot of these guys I saw doing things that inspired me. Because let's just face it, man, back then, you knew your coworkers and you knew your neighbors.
Yes.
You were kind of trapped and stuck in this proximity. Now the world is open, man. And you can join men's groups. You can join communities. I know 50 of them. You know, I know guys that are running them at every price point. I know some that are $10K a month. I know some that are, you know, free. But it's almost kind of let down the barrier that you can see these other people doing some things that maybe you admire or inspire you. And then it's your choice. And life is full of choices. And I think you see people go two ways from there. I think you see the one say, must be nice, Zuby. You know, look at you, man. You're ripped. You got you got money, you got fame, must be nice.
It's all by accident. I just rolled out of bed one day.
And then there's other people that take the time to understand, well, dude, you're on year 18. You know, like, how many years did it take of grinding and getting to that point? And what that did for me when I learned a lot of these things about you and some of these people that inspire me is I just have to put the work in too. And that's one big lesson I've really learned from you is think in terms of decades. You know, don't just be so trapped in your little box and your little community. When you see other people doing great things, you're capable of that too. And so if you're a guy out there that maybe needs that community, man, you can join it today. You can go seek people online that are either yelling about, I don't know what they're yelling about today, man, Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden or Trump or whatever. Or you can find other people doing inspirational things that want to encourage you and want to build you up and want to see you win too, and join that tribe. And that's the gift of social media. And I take this as a parent, man. I'd love your thoughts on this actually, but you know, I already start to talk to my daughter who's going to be 9. You know, Daddy uses social media and uses these tools to better my life. These tools are never going to be neutral. They're either going to damage your life a lot, or they're going to propel you. And how you choose to use these tools is going to be a big part of your future. And so I'm not giving my daughter Facebook or any of this stuff at 9. There's no chance, right? But I'm already starting to plant some seeds in her that, look, you know, my phone right down here, I can use it to look up pornography, and we're in Vegas. I could probably order drugs and prostitutes or whatever I wanted, right? With my phone. That's a tool that I could use that. I can also watch The Chosen and read the Bible and watch any sermon I want, you know? So it's a really powerful tool that I think it was just kind of thrust upon humans, and people are still trying to figure it out. And most people don't zoom back. And I think this is what most people need to do. Take a look at their own life and take a look at the inputs that are coming in all the time. And dude, when I started doing that and realizing I'm letting Fox News program me, I'm letting CNN program me, people that are listening to this conversation, you're being programmed by me and Zuby right now, right? Like, you have to understand that everything that's coming in, but that's also a gift because you can choose.
Yes.
You can choose who you follow.
More than ever before.
Oh, it's incredible, man. You know, I follow, 1,000 people or so online. Every one of them are freaking champs farther along in life than I am. Like I just get inspired every day. And so I think, if you take that approach with it, then you can go that second direction. And instead of saying must be nice, you can say, why not me?
Yes.
If it's possible for them, it's possible for me. I'm a human being with limitless potential. As long as I am willing to put in the work, I can get anywhere I want to go. And I think that was the flip that switched in my mind, if you want to say from a, without just saying everything's God, right? Like that was the big switch that flipped in my mind 5 years ago.
Yeah. I've said before that I think particularly when it comes to boys and men, I've said many times before that I personally have come to the conclusion that, someone can always point out an exception, right? But that men are always building or destroying.
Yeah.
Take that literally, take that metaphorically, however you want. Men are always building or destroying. You can look at little boys. They're building a tower, they're knocking down a tower. They're creating something, they're ruining something. And I think that the best way to sort of pragmatically stay in a positive mindset and to stay useful is to stay building, stay creating, have multiple things, be working on your body, be working on your health, your physical fitness, be working on your knowledge, be working on your skill set. If you have a family or children, boom, like you want a project, like that's a lifelong project. You're constantly creating. So what that does is it's really hard to be doing them both simultaneously. It's hard to be building and destroying simultaneously. So it snuffs out that destructive impulse. I think it directs your testosterone and your competitive nature and your aggression into something that is useful and productive instead of destructive. It takes up your time, so you don't have the time. Like I don't have time to be writing mean comments to people and downvoting YouTube videos. And
I always wonder how people have this time, man.
Yeah, because again, because they're not building.
Yeah,
they're not building. It's mostly men who engage in that, boys and men who engage in that behavior because they're not engaged in building and creating. So it's like, hey, oh, well, look, that guy's building something. Let me go graffiti it. Let me go knock it down, right? And so I think it's so important to always be involved in multiple channels of your life in these things. And that destruction can turn inwards and outwards. And I think what's fascinating about this idea is that it's true on multiple levels. So if you want, what is the most extreme form of self-destruction? It's the most common cause of death. In young men in many countries, right? Self-deletion, okay? That's the extreme. What is the extreme form of outward expression of that? It is homicide, right? It's going out and committing crimes and, taking other people out, right? You want to take the most extreme, right? It's war, it's genocide. Like that's the most extreme manifestation of it. Who's involved in all that stuff? Men, right? It's not women out there doing that stuff. But then on the flip side of it, if you look at the creation, if you look at the building, if you look at construction, again, who's doing that? Men. Like women create human beings and raise human beings and play a massive role in this. But I just don't think that there's a neutral. Because if you think about it, okay, a neutral, what even would a neutral be? A neutral would be just, okay, I'm just going to sit at home and I'm going to just stare at the wall. What would happen if you did that? Your muscles would atrophy. Your muscles would atrophy. Your brain would atrophy. You'd gain weight. It's not neutral.
That's right.
Like if you're not out and about, if you're not exercising and eating right, it's like, no, there's not a neutral. You're not just staying the same. You're actually getting worse.
That's right.
Right? And so you have to use it or lose it. And I think we live in this easy time and relatively sedentary society where, you can make money and you could kind of, in theory, sit in your living room and stay alive, right? You could you could order food.
You could exist.
Yeah, you can exist, right? You can do your calls. You can even do podcasts. You can make YouTube videos. Like you can survive. Basic survival's relatively easy.
Yeah.
You don't need to go and hunt. You don't need to go fishing. You don't need to go farming. Any of that stuff. You just order it all to you. And so in light of that, I think it's more important than ever to move physically, mentally, spiritually. It's like, no, you've got to get out there and...
Yes. And this is man's modern dilemma, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if me and you knew each other 200 years ago, we wouldn't have the opportunity to just sit and chat about life. Like, bro, we needed to go gather food.
Yes.
We needed to make sure our families were warm, and so we could survive. And now everything is so easy, man. And it's you hit it on the nail on the head with the comfort crisis, man. It's a fantastic book, but it's so men, they need a mission. And I think when you really look at the guys who you hit the nail on the head too are destroying, they have no mission. Yeah. There's no purpose. There's no clear vision of this is what I'm building. So again, well, how do they lash out? Well, okay, number one, they're probably addicted to pornography. They're probably just distracting themselves with dopamine, with all these other things that are, substances. And man, my wife and I, we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary and we went away. Thanks, man. We went away for 6 days without the kids, without anything. Day 5.5, we both looked at each other in bed. Can't wait to get back home now. This has been an amazing time. But we didn't really take our phones. We weren't working. It was very intentional. And we know we're building together and we're creating this life that like, man, I'm excited to get up every day, right? And 5 years ago, I wasn't like that. 5 years ago, if I'm honest, I woke up and I hate to even admit this, I would think, I cannot wait until this day is over so that I can zone out and watch, I hope there's a good sports game on tonight. I hope there's a good movie show, something where I can eat some food, maybe some food that's not good for me and just kind of zone out. That was my mindset back then. And I think far too many guys today don't have a mission in life. And they're working a job where they use no creativity. They're sitting in an air-conditioned office all day. Then they're scrolling their phone during breaks, dopamine hit, home, maybe looking at pornography again, doing some of these other things. Drugs, alcohol, a big one, right? Where people are just zoning out, don't have to think about their feelings.
Video games, escapism.
Yes, any one of these things, and there's no mission.
Yeah.
There's no passion. And so a lot of my coaching, man, is to help guys unlock when that alarm goes off at 5 a.m., what can you not wait to get out of bed for? Like what fires you up, man? And for me, it's so easy, right? Like to keep building what we're building and impact people and lay a foundation for my children. And it's just, dude, the thought of snoozing and laying around in my bed just sounds miserable, like laying on a beach for 2 weeks, like, dude, get me home, like I need to keep building and creating because I have a clear mission. And it's apparent around you, you've got a clear mission, man. Yeah. I ask you, how do you do so much? And you're like, well, it's just, that's who I am, right? Yeah. It's like you get up and you like to accomplish things.
I think, and I don't want to say this in a way that some people will probably take this the wrong way. Because they think it's, they'll come back to it must be a nice thing. All right, not everyone can do that, Zuby. But I think, look, my position is being an optimistic realist. I think that I do believe genuinely that everybody can have a job/career that they don't hate. I don't think everyone can have a job or career that they truly love. I don't think that's realistic. But I do think everyone can do a labor that they don't hate. And I think a huge issue is just having so many millions or billions of people who they're living a life that they feel they need to escape from, right? Why do people live for the weekends or just want to get drunk on, can't wait till the evening to get drunk. I can't, they're waking up looking forward to going to bed, right? And that's fundamentally a problem. And I'd say if someone is in that position, look, there's all going to be times where we have to make certain sacrifices and you have to go through some garbage for a while to get to somewhere better. But that nagging feeling, that dissatisfaction, that depression, that anxiety, whatever someone may want to call it, depending on how severe it is. I mean, I think that's your body telling you, that's your brain, that's your spirit telling you, hey, man, something needs to change. This is not sustainable. And I think people have been programmed maybe by big pharma and the media to think, oh, this is just like a chemical imbalance in my brain, or this is whatever the thing is. I just have depression. And in so many cases, it's like, nah, your body's telling you there's something wrong. There's something wrong with your nutrition and or your exercise habits and or your sleep schedule, or maybe you're not drinking enough water, or maybe you just hate your job, or maybe your relationship really sucks, or maybe you don't have enough friends, or the friends you're hanging out with suck, or maybe there's a relationship with your family that you really need to heal, or maybe there's something you're doing that you really shouldn't be doing, and so it's tugging on your conscience. It could be all of these things happening at once, or whatever the combination, but people should listen to that, not try to just numb it or escape from it. It should be like, okay, I need to address this thing. I know I'm falling short in these areas. And if I can remedy this, or at least get on the path to remedying it, that's going to massively change something, because it's not just about reaching the final endpoint. Take something obvious, right? Somebody is obese, okay? You're not going to get in shape overnight. Realistically, it's probably going to, if you're obese, it's probably going to be a multi-year journey. But even the process, being in the process towards that progression, is going to fundamentally change your outlook. It won't just change your body and your mind, but it's like, okay, this is a process that's happening. Every day you're now getting better.
Yes.
So instead of getting worse every day, because again, there's no neutral, instead of just getting worse every day, like I'd be depressed if I thought I was getting, like I'm immune to depression. But like if I was like consciously getting worse every day, I'd probably end up in a state of some type of, oh my gosh, like this sucks. But I think a lot about trajectory.
Yeah.
I think a lot about trajectory, and you always want to be doing your best to make sure you're on a positive and an upward trajectory. I think the same on a cultural level as well. And I like being in a city or being in a country where it feels like it's on an upward trajectory. I go to some places and it's like every time you go back, it's gotten a bit worse. And then you go to other places and every time you go back, hey, it's a little bit better and it's improving, and it just inspires you in a different way.
Yeah, I definitely see that. And I think, man, you hit it. It's not that alcohol tastes so good every night. These people are probably looking so forward to it, right? It's just the escape. And man, I continued to work that job for 3 more years. Once I made that shift and cried that night and I'm like, I'm going to change my life. The thing that changed for me then was, dude, I worked that job with a different mindset. I remember praying before I went into the bank every day and saying, I don't work for this bank. I work for the Lord. I'm going to go be a light here today. And then I started setting goals for myself outside of that job. Some of them were silly, man. Me and my wife refurbished furniture. We were so broke at that time, man. We had like less than, no money. And so we would go to Goodwill's and buy some furniture for $5 and refurbish it and paint it and resell it for $30. But dude, we had a mission. We were getting a little bit better and a little bit closer to our goals at that time. And I think that is the big thing, is no matter where you're at, if you just start to take little steps, man, I was medicated for anxiety back then. Turns out I just ate fast food every day.
There we go.
Snooze.
There we go.
And it was 3 months into quitting a lot of these behaviors. I hit the gym at 5 a.m. every day. Started drinking water instead of, dude, I hate to admit this, I used to drink the dessert coffees that were like 700 calories. I'd drink 2 of them in a day and then wonder why I was so anxious, right? And I remember when I got off the anxiety meds, I now reframe anxiety into my life. It's reduced 95%. And I love when I get the 5% because, dude, it's my body telling me, hey, we need to go journal a little bit. We need to pray a little bit. There's probably something in there that's alerting me that we need to take some action, right? And so I generally think anxiety is not a terrible thing if you frame it in the right way and say, it's just my body telling me I need to make a move.
Yeah.
It's time to do something. What I'm doing in the past isn't working. What I was trying for many years wasn't working. It put me on meds, put me in a pretty depressed state. Okay, it's time to change, right?
As a father of 2 sons and a daughter, it's a very open question here, but what kind of world do you think they're going to live in by the time they're in their 20s or 30s? Where do you see it going? I know this is very hard to predict.
Yeah.
Let's say 20 years from now.
Yeah.
What do you see it all looking like?
Yeah, I think it's going to continue to divide, man. I think it's going to continue to go probably AI and technology and the tools we're going to have are either going to work for you or against you. I think there's going to be a segment of society that every day wakes up, eats Cheetos, and puts on goggles. And they live in some alternate universe. And it's not even real life. And their body continues to decay. And that's just, but they live in this fantasy land, right? I think that's probably going to be a thing. I think there's going to be other people.
Ozempic drip to keep them
just
lean.
Keep it, right? Yeah. It's going to be, and then there's going to be other people who leverage that to live a better life. And, I'm not afraid of anything, I would say, so to speak, because again, I know where my faith lies. But the one thing is sending my daughter off to like university is something I just pray about a lot, I think that's sort of changing even though.
Do you think you will?
I think it'll be her choice,
Sure.
and I think she'll be grounded enough. My daughter's like a little evangelist, bro. She got baptized last year. She's brought like 3 of her friends to church that
Amazing.
didn't go to church. She's a little evangelist. And you know, I want her faith to be her own. It's not like mine, but I don't worry about the world that my kids are going to go into. I think it'll look a lot different, man. I think things are changing quicker and quicker, and that's going to continue. But I also think there's a lot of good, man. And I think it's so easy, the human brain, to just focus on all the negative and all the division and all the, and the circles I'm in, I mean, dude, there's a lot of strong families and a lot of strong people and a lot of great people that are going to continue to put good things out there and produce good things and build and create good things. And I'm very bullish on humanity, man. I think, you know, we're only going to go to better spots in my mind.
That's interesting. I'm halfway with you.
Where's the half you're not?
So I think there's going to be, okay, I wouldn't say I'm bullish on humanity. I'm bullish on your kids. I'm bullish on my future kids. I'm bullish on my friends' future kids. I'm highly worried about the people who are not raised by those types of parents or any parents. I think there's going to be the greatest bifurcation ever in humanity.
Mm-hmm.
So for all of human history, there's been income gaps, there's been wealth gaps, you know, life expectancy gaps to some degree and so on. I just think it's going to go extreme this century. So if you look at the USA, for example, in about 10 years, the population is scheduled to hit 50% obesity rate.
Yeah,
Meaning, so 50% of Americans will be obese, 50% won't be. So I think when it comes to physical health, when it comes to mental health, when it comes to attention span, when it comes to ability to social ability to have conversations, look people in the eye, shake people's hands, have real world interactions, you're already seeing a massive split happening here with young people, right? A lot of them can't look at you in the eye. They don't know how to talk on the phone. They're super socially awkward. They're being raised by iPads. I think you're going to get people who, their form of media, no one's going to watch TV.
Yeah.
You're going to have the people who are reading books, listening to audiobooks, listening to 3-hour podcasts. And then you're going to have the people who struggle to make it through like 5 seconds, right? Like just swiping. So like that's the split.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have people who there are parents who their daughter is half your daughter's age and she's already got a smartphone and social media.
Yeah, I see them.
People can get 4 years old, 5 years old.
Wild, man.
Right? And then you're going to have the parents who are like, no, not until you're 16, 17, 18.
Yeah.
So I just see like a split, like a real split that's going to go on.
So what do you think is the biggest factor in the split? Is it the way that the kids are raised and how the environment they're in?
I think it's multiple things. I think some of it is technological. I think a lot of it is, so look, if you go back not that long ago, almost everybody was raised in a 2-parent family.
Yeah.
That was just the norm.
Yeah.
No, completely normative. The real exception was someone who's not. In fact, I don't even want to use the term because it's considered a swear word these days, but like the term bastard was used to specifically describe someone who was not born to married parents. It was that much of an anomaly, essentially, right? Whereas now it's like it's so normal and it's common, and
21% in the U.S., right, or something.
Yeah,
like
I mean,
that.
in some demographics, it's over 50%, right?
Yeah,
and those numbers are rising.
Yeah.
So I just think that there have been so many changes over the last few decades. It's not like just one thing. It's not like, oh, we just introduced smartphones or we just introduced social media. It's like, nope, you've totally changed the dating and mating landscape. You've changed the technological landscape. You've changed the economic landscape. You've changed, all of these things are changing and it's all happening at once. And I just think, okay, in a couple of decades, like we've already seen some of this split happening, but I just think it's going to really
get wider and wider.
Yeah, it's gonna really get wide. So, and I don't know exactly what that means. I don't know what that's going to lead to, but I do genuinely. There's like there's a large demographic of, okay, let's say people between the ages of 0 and 18 right now. There's a demographic of them that I'm like hyper bullish on, and I'm like, you're gonna fly higher than we and our parents and our grandparents ever got the chance to, partly because of the technology and that acceleration. Like, you're just going to be able to fly and do things that we just couldn't. And then on the other hand, it's like, you're going to get enslaved by the technology. You see what I mean? You said there's going to be people who wake up, they put the goggles on. In the past, that wasn't even a possibility.
Right.
Now it is.
Yeah.
That's my point. That's why I think the split. Because in the past, it was like, this was not even an option. In the past, obesity wasn't an option.
Yeah, you just didn't have plentiful food. You couldn't push a button and have anything delivered.
It wasn't an option.
That's right.
Whereas now, it's the easiest option. And more and more people will take the easiest option because it's easy.
Yeah.
So that's why obesity is rising, because it's easier to become obese than it is to be jacked or to stay in shape.
Yeah.
So I just see that playing out, and people learn from their parents. So, you know, if both parents are obese, very high probability the child is going to be as well, because they're eating meals together and they're making those decisions. They're not learning.
4 times as likely to be obese.
Oh, 4 times as likely. Yeah, there you go. What if the parents are also addicted to TikTok?
Yeah.
What if the parent?
Right.
You see what I mean? So I just 100%. Think it's going to go.
It's also never been easier to separate yourself from the herd than right now. And I believe that will continue. You know, our children will have even to be in the top 1% won't be as hard then, because it's just the norms and the way everybody else is going. And so I view that as my role, and my wife and I with our kids. I mean, there's a reason we parent the way we parent, right? Like, my daughter is not yet 9. If I had to put a number on it, I'd say she's read 8,000 books, 9,000 books. Something like this, man.
I haven't read that many books.
Bro, I mean, we're talking when she's 1, we're reading, 20 books a night to her. No joke. 20 books a night before we put them to bed. Our boys, we read books to them every night, man. And, we're asking them questions. Pick this out, pick that. We're developing their attention spans, right? There's a reason that my kids are outside 5, 6, 7 hours a day. Every day. They're going to be physically fit. There's a reason my son is 3 and asks me at least 2, 3 times a week, Daddy, can we go do push-ups?
Yes.
I'm going to raise my kids to learn you got to delay gratification. I talk to my daughter about this all the time, that the easy thing is not usually the best thing. My daughter just asked me, can we do 100,000 steps together in a day?
Wow.
That's 52 miles.
Wow.
She just did 60,000 steps with me as an 8-year-old a couple months ago. So she got up at 4 a.m. because she came to me and said, hey, Daddy, I saw you did 100,000 steps. I think I can do it.
Wow.
And she said, I want to try. And I said, hey, we're not going to try. I said, here's what it's going to take. Here's what it's going to look like. I laid it out for her, and I said, if you want to put in this much work and do this, then we will do it. I said, think about it a day and come back to me. So she comes back an hour later, impulsive 8-year-old. I can do it. Okay, let's go. So we did 60,000 as a trial run, and she crushed it. She woke up at 4 a.m. We hit the steps, just all throughout the day. We finished at like 9 p.m. And, she's fired up now to do 100,000. And, it's not about the steps. It's not about this or that. It's about teaching her. You should have seen the level of accomplishment on her. When you talk about having a mission and you can't be depressed when you're trying to set a bar higher and higher and higher and achieve things. I even see that in an 8-year-old, right? So adults aren't that much different. And so I think every parent should take that upon themselves. Dude, I don't go to the park and sit there on my phone.
Yeah.
I go to the park and this was a couple days ago. I found 3 little kids that were probably between 3 and 5, and they all had squirt guns. And I said, anybody can squirt me as much as you want. That was my cardio for the day. I literally ran around for 45 minutes with 5 kids trying to squirt me with squirt guns, right? But what are we teaching them then, man? They're moving, they're in the sun, they're laughing, they're socializing. Like, I feel like parents need to take that role really, really serious. And I get it. It's hard when you work a job all day, then to come home. I tell guys all the time, man, don't just go straight from your job to your family. Take 2-3 minutes. Pull a block away, turn your phone off, and sit there. And take a few deep breaths and picture, I call it the BDE, the big dad energy, baby. Think about the big dad energy you're going to bring to your family that night. Don't just go in and be looking down at your phone and stressed about the day. Bring some life to your family. Hey, do you guys want to go for a walk or a bike ride or a scavenger hunt or swim, or what are we going to do tonight, right? And bring that kind of energy in. And dude, I picture a world, and these are the circles I'm in. All the dads are living like this. We're doing this. And so when you talk about where the kids going, I'm like, dude, yeah, in my circles, these kids are gonna just do anything they want, man. The world is at their fingertips because this is normal to them. Like, just getting out and running around for 5-6 hours a day is normal to them. Reading 10 books a day is normal to them, right? So I think that's our biggest duty as parents, a responsibility I take real serious. And I think, man, any parent watching this, like, you can give your kid the ultimate privilege by just putting that kind of intentionality into it.
Tyler, you're an inspiring guy. I'm feeling inspired right now.
Let's go do some push-ups, man.
I'm down. Dude, Tyler, thanks for coming on the show. Where can people find and follow you online?
Yeah, on X is definitely the biggest spot, man. Are we calling it X now? Is that just
X.
the thing? Okay,
It's
we're done with Twitter. It's on X at Ty Romper. On there every single day, posting on there every day. Don't miss days on there. I love the community and interacting on there. Also, growing on pretty fast on YouTube now. A lot of family content on there, and that's just my name, Tyler Todt. But come say hi on either of those. And dude, it's always an honor, man. I love you, brother. It's great to be on here,
Love you too, man. God bless you.